want to tell you a little bit about my mom. Not the version of her who lived through the concentration camps. And not that beautiful Odori dancer who she once was. And not that silent woman who I spent my whole life trying to understand. Because I'll talk about her in just a bit. I want to tell you about the mom that I knew. Because that woman was a badass. She always knew exactly what she wanted. She usually always got exactly what she wanted. She was a woman of obsessions. One of her big obsessions was watching Korean soap operas, K-dramas. She'd stay up all night watching these 20-hour-long odysseys. The love, the betrayal, the sacrifice, and these impossibly beautiful actors. She was enamored by these actors. It didn't even matter that she didn't speak Korean because she was obsessed. And after days of binge watching, laughing and crying, completely consumed, she'd emerge exhausted and immediately on the hunt for the next drama. And to find that next drama for Mom was never as simple as just going to a store, because she always wanted the best new ones, the ones that weren't yet in a store. And to get those, you needed connections. But the thing with Mom is she always had connections. So you need unreleased bootleg Korean soap operas? Mom had a guy. How about newly imported designer handbags? Mom had a guy. Interested in an exclusive underground bridge tournament? Mom knew a guy. She was connected. And yes, playing bridge was another one of her obsessions. Her and my dad were life masters, so serious, competitive players. And after my dad passed, she just kept playing 4 or 5 days a week. Country clubs and friends' living rooms, community centers. She used to tell me, learn to play bridge, because if you do, you'll have a friend anywhere in the world. And that may be true, but what I remember about Mom's bridge playing wasn't the cards. It was her wardrobe. Because she used to call me at least once or twice a week to come over, not to eat or chit-chat or anything like that. She needed my help picking out her outfits for bridge. We'd stand in front of her closets and pull out jackets and scarves and jewelry, handbags, shoes. She always had to dress just so, depending on the occasion. And the handbags were always the topper. She didn't own a bag that didn't have a logo on it. You know, Chanel, Pierre Cardin, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, in every shape, size, and color. And she never bought those bags in a store. She just always believed if you knew the right people, you can get the best stuff. The more exclusive, the more unique, the better. It's kind of how Mom lived her life, always in search of that better. Before all those things, her big obsession was having children, especially a daughter. My aunts used to tell me all the time, having a daughter was Mom's biggest dream in life. Her first child was a baby girl. Carla was her name. Sadly, she died in infancy. But it would be 8 years later, 9 years later, actually, my brother Paul was born somewhere. 5 years after Paul, me, and then a year after me, my precious brother John. But I was her daughter. I was her precious little girl, born 14 years after baby Carla. I was her dream come true, her darling, darling little girl. And from the day I was born, I was destined to be a disappointment. Trauma, a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. How does trauma happen? Pain, abuse, violence, neglect. Trauma can be physical, emotional, cognitive. We've all experienced trauma in some way to some degree, right? Well, my trauma, dance class. I hated dance. Every Saturday, Mom would pack my kimono and fans, put my hair up into a bun, and send me off to Odori, classical Japanese dance. At 12 years old, I hated sitting on my knees and bowing. I hated wearing a kimono and walking those tiny ladylike steps. Because, I wanted to be free. I wanted to be cool, like Charlie's Angels. My teacher, it turns out, was Mom's teacher from way back. Her name was Madame Fujima Kansuma. We called her Osho-san. And she scared the crap out of me. She looked like a porcelain doll, this white powdered face, red lips, this permanent half smile. And when she moved slow and spoke intentionally, every word crafted with dual meaning. And when she looked at me, I swear she could hear me cursing at her in my head. It was suffocating. And Mom, in Osho-san's presence, she became this giddy schoolgirl. It was so weird. I couldn't understand why she'd act like such a submissive child around this tiny, pretentious woman. But what I didn't understand then was that when Mom was with Osho-san, she was transported back to a time when she was a teenager in camp. So, growing up, the adults would use this term, camp days, interspersed with Japanese, so us kids wouldn't understand what they were talking about. 食べ物がない時のことを camp days 思い出してください. I didn't realize how weird that was until I learned what camp days actually meant. I just assumed they were reminiscing about bonfires and sleeping in tents. but what they actually meant were the concentration camps, those government prison camps. During World War II, the US government incarcerated approximately 120,000 people of Japanese descent into relocation centers, historically recognized as concentration camps. This was initiated by President Franklin D. Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066, dated February 19, 1942. Driven by wartime hysteria, racial prejudice, and failure of political leadership following the Japanese military attack on Pearl Harbor. Roughly 2/3 of all those incarcerated were native-born US citizens. No individual was ever charged with espionage or disloyalty. So I'm sure you've heard about these camps, right? It's a pretty well-documented thing that happened to the Japanese Americans. But have you heard of the assembly centers? Now, this is a much lesser-known fact, that before these camps were even built, our families were forced from their homes. They were rounded up and herded into temporary detention centers. These were converted fairgrounds and racetracks. There they spent months living in horse stalls, just waiting for the camps to be built. 6 people in a stall meant for 1 horse. They slept on straw mattresses on manure-stained floors. They had open showers. They ate canned foods like chili con carne and sauerkraut, foods that made them sick. And they had open latrines. There was no privacy, no dignity. Mom never once spoke about these camps. After about 6 months of that, then came the actual relocation. Trains bound for 10 camps across the US, from Arkansas to Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Colorado. These were barbed wire encampments built by our own government to keep more than 120,000 slant-eyed Japs in prison. Mom's family went to Poston, Arizona, in the desert, where temperatures reached 115 and dipped below freezing in the winter. There was red dust everywhere. It crept into every crack of their barrack walls. It was in their clothes, their hair, their food, and their lungs. Mom was 18 when she entered camp, 22 when she was finally released. And the only thing she ever told me about those 4 traumatic years was that she danced. Odori dance. I hated Odori dance. It represented everything I hated about myself. This awkward little Japanese girl in this predominantly white elite prep school. I ended up at a school called Marlborough. This was way, way back, before diversity was ever even a concept. But I ended up there because, well, as my dad climbed the corporate ladder at the Department of Water and Power, my mom's obsessions with status and reputation grew alongside his success. So with each promotion came more public exposure, more social events. For Mom, these events were torture, worries about what to wear, how to act, what to say. She threw herself into the role of the executive's wife, but she always felt like an outsider. The weight of those years spent in camp, not finishing school, those feelings of rejection. It was at one of these high society dinners where Mom first learned about Marlborough. This was an elite all-girls academy that represented everything she wanted for me. By this time, I had changed schools like 5 times already. So this one was just par for the course, but I was excited about Marlborough. They had kids of celebrities, an Olympic-sized pool, tennis courts. And Mom bought me every combination of the school uniform. I was so ready. But when school started, it became clear so quickly. I didn't belong there. The whispers in the hallways, the side eyes as I walked down the walkway, not being invited to the parties. Even my brand new uniform set me apart because at Marlborough, the cool girls never wore brand new uniforms. They wore soft faded vintage heirlooms passed down from mothers and sisters and great aunts. For a more ambitious 12-year-old, Marlborough would have been a dream. But for me, it was hell. I stood out in ways I couldn't do anything about. I just didn't fit in. I was an other. One of the others was a girl named Meiko Takasugi. She was the daughter of the Consul General of Japan. And Meiko's pride and enthusiasm in her Japanese heritage embarrassed me. Her bows and her comical giggles, it drew unfavorable attention, so I avoided her. And I heard what they say about her behind her back. She's so weird. She's like a puppy dog. What is that bowing? It's so creepy. I didn't want anyone to think I was like her. Then one afternoon, I was rushing to my locker and I spotted her in the hall, surrounded by a group of girls in awe as she folded a dollar bill into this perfect, delicate little crane. I grabbed my book, pretending not to notice, but her voice rang out. "Hello, Tamaki-chan! Come, look!" I slammed my locker shut and ran. But the next morning, she caught me at the front gate. "Hello, Tamaki-chan! Ohayo gozaimasu!" She rushed towards me. I wanted to run, but it was too late.
I'm so glad to finally meet you. I saw you yesterday at the rocker. You were in big hurry. My Oto-chan knows your Oto-chan. Did you know? Sugoi ne. I said under my breath, please just stop bowing. She laughed, mistaking my discomfort for humor. You and me are like the same, Tamaki-chan. We should be friends, honto. You come to my house after school, ne? Itadakimasu. It felt like everyone was watching. I could hear the whispers. I just wanted to disappear. And just the other day, my friend Julie Fimpler from 6th grade ignored me in the hallway. Flush with humiliation, I just said loud for everyone to hear, "You're so weird. I don't want to be your friend." Her smile faltered. She looked confused and then hurt. I rushed off, my heart pounding, shame burning my cheeks. And that hurt in her eyes will haunt me forever. But today, Marlborough prides itself on its diversity and inclusion. I could have been a trailblazer, but I chose to contribute to that culture of exclusion because I didn't understand. Mom's relentless pursuit of status and class was born from her own insecurities, but she never shared that with me. Her desperate desire for me to belong, I never told her how much I didn't. I never told her how alone I was, how ashamed I was. And this is kind of where that story of Mom and me started, the one that led to our lifetime of miscommunications and deceptions. So many words just unsaid.
When I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? Here's what she said.
So it turns out that Osho-san, you know, my dance teacher, she was a woman of privilege in camp. She must have mesmerized someone of great authority because she was free to travel from camp to camp to enliven the prisoners with her dramatic performances. She'd enter the camp sitting high and proud in the backseat of a USMC Jeep. She brought to the desert the perfume scents of gardenia, the floral colors of wisteria. She brought enchantment and grace. For Mom, Osho-san was just everything. She adored her so much. And to her, Odori was survival. But I just hated it with a passion. I hated the bowing and the silent stares. It was brutal. I hated feeling like this little Japanese girl. It became like my identity with my friends' parents. They'd stand right in front of me and refer to me as your little Japanese friend. Would your little Japanese friend like to stay for dinner? Or would your little Japanese friend like to try meatloaf and mashed potatoes? My mom made a great meatloaf. She wanted so much for me to be this high society girl, to be admired. I didn't know how to be that. So I found my comfort on the fringes. I was one of those you could find smoking behind the bleachers, falling off my chair after downing Quaaludes in Latin class. That was me. Ditching school altogether. Why? I just wanted to hurt her. But week after week, she would force me back into Odori class with her wounded glare. I'd enter the studio mopey and bored. I'd huff and roll my eyes and act like a spoiled, defiant child. But when Osho-san looked at me with that prolonged, inquisitive stare, she forced me to my knees. And she turned to my mom and asked with that half smile, "Anime, is this your daughter?" Weeks turned into years. The more I learned Odori, the more I studied. And the more I tried to be Japanese, the more I realized I would never be Japanese. Through studying Odori, learning about the camps, what true adversity might be, my affection for Mom grew. I stopped fighting. I put my hair up into a bun. I wore kimonos. I danced. I went on to achieve my natori, my master's in Odori dance. But it wasn't
my achievement. It was her will, her silent stories, her love. It was understanding. Fujima Kansumari desu. どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
Mom, what was camp like? Mom, what was it like dancing in camp? Well, did you go to school there? Did you have friends? Mom, talk to me. Well, what about Grandma? How did she manage? Auntie Yo, Uncle Dick and Uncle Bill, they were so young. What did they do all day? Mom, talk to me. You know, I know all about it. I've read all about it, Mom. I know what happened to you. I just need to hear it from you. Well, where did you sleep? What did you eat? Mom, talk to me! Why didn't you fight? What is this goddamn wall?
I know the sound of silence. I heard it every day. That silence was her retribution. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was protection. It was shame. But beneath it were stories of injustice, of survival, of undying resistance. And now, how could it be happening again? We have mistaken apathy for security, silence for civility, and the rule of law for justice. And when we forget, when we deny, when we scroll and sigh and hope, it happens again. Another other
called an enemy. Different names, same playbook. Executive power, xenophobia, disappearing humans, again. Not again. I will not be silent. I will not let the ghosts of my family drift nameless into the past. I will dance. I will rage. I will defy. I will not be silent. We are the descendants of survivors. We owe them more than our complacency. We owe it to the families in holding cells, in deserts, in the bellies of ships, in cages labeled temporary. We must say no to fear dressed as policy, no to silence dressed as patriotism. We cannot let fear be the catalyst to do harm to other human beings. We must remember, resist, and maintain our humanity.
The silence we inherit can only be broken by the courage to stand up, to speak out, and to resist.